We will begin with our Shanti Mantra. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah Harihi Om. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavate Devasvinavadhe Tamastu Ma Vidvishavage. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we are discussing Karma Yoga. In Karma Yoga, we are arriving at Ishvara Pranidhana, Bhakti, Ishvara Arpita Buddhi. So this is the topics that we finished with in the last class. So we will continue our discussion on that. The whole point of devotion to the Lord needs to be understood in the context of Mumukshutva. Bhagavad Gita, we see that the Lord mentions there are 4 types of devotees. Arthi, Artharthi, Mumukshu, Jignasu, Jnani. Let us leave the Jnani alone. So basically, among the seekers, among the unenlightened, there are 3 types. The one who looks up to God's help, God's grace, invokes God in prayer or whatever, when there is trouble. Like our story of Gajendra Moksha is a standard example of this, Arthi. Artharthi, the one who prays to God for getting things. He's not in trouble, but he wants money, fame, transfer. When we were all students, we will go to, I don't know whether to call it as Arthi or Artharthi, going to the Ganesha, the local Ganesha temple, who offer a special prayer just before exam. So it is a crisis. So you can say it is Arthi, or I want good marks, so Artharthi. So it comes in both ways. And of course, Mumukshu or Jignasu, the one who is a seeker of knowledge, which is also Mumukshu. So here we understood that the one who seeks liberation, when he is mature, is actually a seeker of knowledge, because liberation is of the nature of knowledge. We arrived at that. So Jignasu here means Mumukshu, the one who wants liberation, the one who wants knowledge, both are same, because Jnana is liberation. Good. Right now we are going to discuss God and Bhakti in the context of a Jignasu. Because a Karma Yogi is a person, as we saw, Karma Yoga is Nivritti Dharma. It is a path of self-purification that prepares a person for receiving the vision of the self from the teacher. So making the mind ready for self-knowledge, that's all Karma Yoga does, Chitta Shuddhi. Instead of going deeper and deeper into the quagmire of action and result, that samsara, what we say as that quicksand of samsara. The more and more we are result oriented, the more and more we are strengthening. The more we are result oriented, the more we strengthen our vasanas and samskaras, and that which pushes us into action more. Like Patanjali says, the cycle of klesha and karma keeps on getting reinforced. He says, so klesha means the pain causing affliction, which is basically egoism, the identity of oneself as the doer, the enjoyer, and the different roles that one assumes on oneself. This is called asmita. Then based on that, we develop a lot of likes and dislikes, and then we cling to situations and we cling to life, that which manifests as a huge fear of death, abhinivesha. These are all klesha. So these kleshas, these afflictions in the mind, they push us into different kinds of actions. Some actions that are aimed at making ourselves more comfortable, which is nothing but getting rid of discomfort. Something to gain something, or to protect what we have gained, or to get rid of something that is unwanted. So it is always a constant struggle with the environment, constant struggle to get things done. constant struggle to change the way the things affect us. And some people even completely lose track and they want to go and save the world. Especially we have these activists, these activists are they're a very sad bunch. Uh, it's because, it's nice they want devote for a cause, but it is more like, you may say that the activists are doing something like a yajna, but in most cases, what happens is activism is not based on understanding the Jiva Ishvara Srishti. It is too much investment on what is not one's dharma. So all kinds of, most of the activism is like this: environmental activism, vegan activism, feminist activism, all kinds of activism, social activisms, religious activism. All of these activisms are, it's an extreme extension of total focus on wanting to change the world. Everybody wants to change the world, poor world. At the moment somebody gets some extra energy or extra resources, they can't keep quiet. They want to go out there and do mischief and change the world. But in a karma yogi is a person who wants to change one. It focuses on changing oneself. Focus is on changing how the world affects me, how I am getting affected by the world. Whatever decisions I am making it based on a realistic, objective understanding, or am I a complete victim of subjective clouds? Is all my understanding, is all my decisions, are all my actions, all my decisions, are they all clouded by what we call as, the subjective bias? Are they all clouded by my likes and dislikes and my preferences? No, am I imposing? If you really think, most people, if you, in a moment of reflection, many might realize whenever we are very keen on changing something out there, most of the time it is because of a personal reason. You cannot find passion unless one is a vehicle of Ishvara, one is an instrument of grace, one is a saint. Unless one is a saintly person, that's a yogi, what we call as a Patanjali calls as Ritambara Tatra Prajna. There is a Yoga Sutra that says the mind of that yogi who is possessed of a extremely sattvic mind with just a little bit of rajas and tamas here and there, very residual. Because of that, what happens, his mind is in complete tune with the universal order of things, with the truth, with the reality. Being in tune with reality, wherever he goes, as the situation's need demands, based on the nature of the situation, it is the reality that flows through him as a force of grace, and then it brings in a huge harmony. Except in that case, where there is a yogi who is a vehicle of grace, except that every passion is a personal passion. It is some kind of a childhood issue or some ego issue or some personal vendetta, or or it is some kind of fancy. So these are the only reasons a person can be very passionate about a social cause. If the person is honest, if such a person comes to yoga, karma yoga, wants to become a yogi, wants to arrive at, having invested in being an activist, one suddenly understands the nature of moksha. It is very important to analyze the nature of the activism. In the light of Shastra, one has to analyze, is the cause that I am fighting for, is it a valid cause? And is it my job? Is it my swadharma? And what is the actual reason for me getting so worked up about it? Sometimes we would have forgotten, sometimes we would be a nobody. So there is an identity crisis. Usually a lot of people with identity crisis become activists. So they go out there and they want to prove themselves. So the world becomes your victim. So you go around and mess up with the world because you want to prove yourself, and you become very famous or whatever. And then there is a lot of lobbies. So if you market yourself correctly, some lobby is going to fund you. Then you become a big social activist, social worker. Most of the cases are like this. When I was doing my master's in social work, I came across a few. And in most cases, it was like this. It's either one of our professors used to say, social work is the last resort. So, in understanding Ishvara and Ishvara Bhakti will help us to first not get into fake kind of selflessness. There is a lot of us suffer from a fake kind of selflessness, where basically the mind, the sense of doership is completely hijacked by some kind of a fancy or some emotional issue inside. And then we invest a lot of time and effort and we build an identity out of that, and then you cannot leave it. There was a great, there was a man who was heading a huge spiritual organization, which was under, which is under one of the biggest spiritual leaders of the world, of India. The person is not there anymore, and this person is the president of that organization. And when somebody asked him, or my friend asked him, don't you think that all these issues are there, and this is all fake? Don't you know all that? And the man said, yes, I know, but I have already spent 35 years, 40 years in this. Now I cannot go back. So this person, he was a very successful man before, and then he's the president of an organization, and he said that. So like this, we have so many. So when we are approaching Karma Yoga, because we want moksha, first thing we need to understand is we cannot delay Swadharma anymore, because of the importance of being in tune with Ishvara's Srishti. So this is the main topic of the day, Ishvara's Srishti. Unless we are in tune with Ishvara's Srishti, I will come to that. I will explain what is Ishvara's Srishti. There is no hope of freedom from samsara, because we would have not even come to dharma. Right? Forget about moksha. The first purushartha, dharma itself is a problem, is because we are completely caught up in Jiva Srishti instead of Ishvara Srishti. What is Ishvara Srishti? What is Jiva Srishti? First, I will explain it in a very common man language. You can say God's creation, individual creation. Now, I can go on and on with a lot of interesting stories, but we don't have time. There are enough people who do entertainment. I don't want to do entertainment. That's the story of a bhakta who went to Lord Krishna in Vaikuntha, blah, blah, blah. There are a lot of stories of that. But the point is this: the Lord's creation and my creation within the Lord's creation. It's like a universal set and a subset. So you, me, all the people around, each person, each one of us, we have our own world inside the world. Our subjective noise within the orchestra of universal order. This is God's music orchestra. You think of this like an orchestra, like Lord's music is going on, orchestra is going on, the conductor is Ishvara there. And then we have, the well-trained ones, they're all going with a script, with the order of the orchestra and following the conductor. And there are these ones who want to, when you are part of an orchestra, that is not the place to show off your personal talent. The actual ideal show off in an orchestra is to play your part perfect. So that would be the best kind of showcasing one's talent when one is an orchestra. But if one's showing the wrong note, self-importance, right? So a part of an orchestra and an instrumentalist cannot succumb to self-interest. Or one has to channelize the self-interest as one who is doing the best performance in tune with the orchestra, right? So in the same way, it is in this Lord's creation, in this world that is running in the There is a problem with the internet. I will. I'm
So, shall I unmute you, sir? 1 second.
like Bhasmasura, Lord Shiva gave a boon to Bhasmasura. And then finally the Bhasmasura put his hand on Lord Shiva himself. So like that, I told the host to not let people unmute themselves. And finally I could not unmute my mic. Karma is a, whatever, I cannot use the word in the class. Fine. So, Ishvara Srishti, when we want to understand God's creation and individual creation, it's like this. All the laws of nature, all the laws of nature, and the way an order emerges in a system based on all the individual factors, an order emerges in a system. A natural order emerges in a system. Wherever ego is not at play, like the famous J. Krishnamurti used to say, when you are not, the other is. The other is always, but you are making noise. So the choice is about me making the noise or not making the noise. So we have to understand when we say Ishwar Srishti, this is an understanding based on the Shraddha that this entire universe comes from a conscious, self-conscious, intelligent source. That is a source of intelligent, conscious being at the base of all that is. So this is not some random mutation. So those who are, those who don't believe in a spiritual reality, I mean, of course, I don't think any of them are here, but if you happen to hear this discourse, this whole concept is possible, the Karma Yoga is possible only with either an abstract, knowledge-based, non-symbolic working relationship with God, Ishvara, or a personal, a bhava-oriented, symbolic, and a religious, a deity-based personal relationship with Ishvara, right? So at least one of this should be there. You may not understand everything, but you may have natural bhakti to a divine form. So there are a lot of divine forms given by the Shastra. So one can have, if one has bhakti towards that, then the job is very easy. And eventually one will come to Jnana. One does not have, but because of this modern education, right? So even I found it very difficult because too much of this modern thinking. We don't have that Shastriya attitude. We don't, all these urban people, we don't have this a natural innocent childlike devotion to the Lord, that what an uneducated villager would have. We don't have that. Or what a very traditionally trained person who's very traditional from childhood would have. Or, I mean, plus with all the past punya, if one has been a devotee in the past life, bhakti comes naturally in this life. So if that is there, it's great. But when that is not there, we can still relate with Ishvara through understanding. Even the great saint Appar, in one of his songs, he says, some enlightened people, there are some who are enlightened people who worship Lord through knowledge. He says that. So, though he means on a higher level, but what I'm trying to say is when we understand and appreciate the totality, the totality in different ways. First, before I am aware of myself as a person, before I started telling what I want, what I don't want, I am here. When I come here, I find the world. So before I came, I find the world. And the world is going on in its own order. A lot of things are happening, things are sustained. And after I'm gone, I'm dead, the world is going to continue. I'm not necessary for this world to function. First, we need to understand. I am nobody, and I'm not needed for this world to function. So the first step in moving from in appreciating Ishvara Srishti is to understand where I stand as an individual. Individual, I am nothing in front of the totality. So, and we recognize how powerful the totality is. I plan everything. All it takes is an earthquake to finish it. Sometimes I don't plan absolutely anything. There are people who have extreme luck. They don't plan, they don't try much. And out of the blue, everything falls in place for them. Right? Sometimes it happens to us also. Sometimes we have not put enough effort. We have been very chill, but we have obtained the result much more than what we expected. There are times where we have toiled and still the expected result did not come. No, so we see all that. So we see that happening in all our lives. Here, what can be useful in the context of Karma Yoga, when we see in the Shastra, in Bhagavad Gita, everywhere, is to learn to appreciate the fact that there are a lot of forces that are not under our control. And there are a lot of forces beyond our capacity of perception. There are a lot of forces beyond science, the capacity of science. There are a lot of factors, what we call as Devam. Devam here, the divine, in the sense is there is a dimension of this universe of life which is formed of different structures of intelligence, different consciousness structures, different forces, different intelligent forces that are disembodied. They are not people. There are intelligent forces which are not people that govern a lot of functions in this universe. So this is what we mean as Devata, Devam, and all that. And every organ, for example, when we read the Shastra, we understand that every organ of our body has Adi Devata. For example, the governing deity for the hands is Lord Indra. The governing deity for vision is Surya. So like that, we have a deity for every, the deity is, of course, we have a symbolic representation of the deity. But when we say a Devata, it's nothing but a contextual functionality of the cosmic intelligence. We can understand it like that. So there is an intelligence source of everything. Whether that in how that what is the relationship between our creation and that intelligent source is another topic. We don't have to go into that. We don't need to understand that. It is just enough to appreciate that everything comes from an intelligent source. Whether that intelligent source is personally manipulating things or not, is it all-controlling, all-knowing God who is getting involved in every little thing or not, is another story. So how we understand that intelligent source for what we call as Ishvara here, how we understand Ishvara is another, the functionality of Ishvara. Shastra, there are a lot of ways of understanding that. There are a lot of models to understand that. Panchapratyam and all that is there. So we will leave that alone, because that is a huge topic. But what we can understand is there is this intelligent source on which the world is running, because of whose support all the systems are functioning, all the laws of the universe are held together. And into that intelligent source, everything goes back in the end. So that intelligent source of everything is Ishvara, right? No. So when something manifests from Ishvara, we call it Ishvara Srishti, projection or the creation of the Lord. So in Ishvara Srishti, the main point is there is total knowledge, complete cosmic knowledge in every pixel, in every point, in every little blade of grass. The entire knowledge of the universe is there. In every atom, entire knowledge of the universe is there. So this is what we need to understand. One piece of creation from Ishvara has behind it the totality, the understanding of the totality, the knowledge of the totality. On the other hand, me, the jiva, the individual, my knowledge is limited. I'm just giving a functional way of understanding how we can use it for karma yoga. Right? So let us not get into too much metaphysics. Then we will end up in Ajatavada. So I'm not going there. So at a karma yoga level, as a karma yogi, as a yogi, to understand, we have to create a working relationship with this cosmic intelligence, which we call Ishvara. Right? And we have to be in harmony with that. How? As an individual, my knowledge is limited. My power is limited. My possessions, my domain of command is limited. My resources are limited. And my time as in this body is limited. I'm born, I grow old, I die. And again, I'm born, grow old, die until I break the cycle through knowledge. Right. Now, as an individual, anything that I create can be done in two ways, or anything I want to manifest, I can manifest it using the laws of the universe. I can invoke a law of Ishvara in a context. And I can, being in tune with the laws of nature, like I will start using the word nature here, like gardening, for example. In gardening, we are using laws of nature. We manipulate a little bit here and there. We see how things work. We do it. And to a certain extent, we can interfere in the ecosystem. When we interfere too much, when things go not okay, when you go to a very experienced senior gardener, that person will tell you, gee, don't do this. Please don't plant this plant here. It will become like a weed and it will destroy all the other important plants. So we have to do this demarcation. So like this, these gardening people have a lot of rules on which plant to be, which plant can be next to what plant and what season, how much we should water. Oh, a plant needs water. I keep on pouring water. And I was one person who was having pots in the apartment. That person told me, no, don't pour too much water because the roots can rot. They say you should not pour too much water because all that I know, it's more water, it's good for the plant. No, only the right amount of water. So all these, we understand the laws of the nature and we adapt ourselves, we control ourselves and we respect the laws of the nature. And we are actually serving the nature there. And then the nature gives back. So as according to the result that we want, we understand, we bend down to the nature. A surfer goes to the beach and does surfing. You cannot control the waves. So you understand the nature of the waves. And based on that, you see what you can do. So this is what we are talking about, where it becomes very important to understand my limitation as an individual in front of the infinite power, the omniscient, the omnipresent, the omnipotence, and the omniscience of nature, which is sustained by the process called yajna. Yajna is nothing but a selfless, in the context of nature, not in the context of a Vaidika yajna. The context of nature, we can be this. Everything is doing its yajna. A selfless dedication to one's own dharma and a selfless contribution to the collective order. You have to just be yourself. What are you designed for? What are you cut out for? You just have to do that. And you are cut out in a certain way as part of a huge order which you don't understand. A tree keeps on bearing fruits, just continues to be a tree. It has its job. Then there are these birds which carry the seeds somewhere, and then there is this pollination and all that. But each part of the plant, of the tree, does its job. And it has a relationship with the ecosystem. And the ecosystem takes care that the species of the tree survives. Until a man goes and interferes and messes up with the ecosystem. Right? So if you see in nature, nothing messes up with the universal order. Only man. If there is going to be an apocalypse, a species, or when there's going to be a natural disaster, a species has to disappear from the planet. It's part of nature. And the species has no problem disappearing. The individual animal struggles, but they don't have the power to go and interfere in the order of things so that they preserve themselves at the cost of others. So they don't do that unless it is driven by instincts, unless they are programmed by instinct. Only human does it. Why do we do that? Because at the human level, we have two things that is inside us. We have the sense of being an experiencer and a sense of being a doership, the ownership, that sense of ownership over experiences and a sense of ownership over one's actions. What differentiates us from the animal is that we have this sense of ownership, this ego, kartrutva buddhi, the bhoktrutva buddhi, from where we have this, what we have, ahankara, we say. This ahankara is there because of ahankara. And because of the heightened intelligence, we want to prolong an experience that is pleasant. And we want to get rid of the experience that is unpleasant. Now, this is the natural tendency, but this tendency is not empowered in an animal. Like we saw a few classes before the experiment with the rat. Once we interfere in its natural programming and we create a new input and new programming and new possibilities, then the rat goes only for pleasure and forgets the food. We saw that example, right? So this tendency is there because all life is based, all individual birth is based on ignorance and craving for gratification and acquiring pleasure and avoiding pain. So this is the instinct. But above the instinct, as a human being, we have developed a certain level of manipulative ability and a sense of ownership over the experiences. And this sense of ownership takes us on a ability, takes us on a tangent where we are able to create our own world. We are able to mess up with the laws of the universe, and for the sake of our own, our ability to interfere in the flow of things is very high, to the extent that we can make it detrimental to our own welfare. When we see the human history, we can see that, right? So this Jiva Srishti is the individual creation based on ahankara inside the Lord's creation. Even animals have Jiva Srishti. They have their own world, their own projections. Even animal brains are known to dream, all that. But the ahankara aspect is not as developed as in a human being. So we have that sense of extreme sense of I, where we become the center of this whole universe, and we want to sustain our world, right? So we have our own creation, our own Jiva Srishti, which is based on ignorance. So all that we create is based on ignorance and our limited knowledge. We will never get universal knowledge, never. Probably as a perfect yogi, one's mind can be in tune with universal knowledge. We become a vehicle through which the universal knowledge manifests, because the universal knowledge is, the cosmic intelligence is. As an individual, I cannot get infinite knowledge. It's like, all the information of the universe. No, I cannot even get the entire information about one blade of grass. If you keep doing research on a blade of grass, you'll be doing it forever. There is always a new dimension that is emerging. A simple one subatomic particle they are researching for 70 years, and still it is showing a new colors, new vibrations, and new manifestations. So in quantum physics, it keeps on. There is a surprise every day for scientists. Right? So when I understand this, we have to appreciate two things. One, we have to accept the limitation of Jiva Srishti. We have to accept the natural limitation I have as a Jiva in terms of my power, in terms of my knowledge, and in terms of my resources. And I recognize the infinite and unboundedness of nature, Ishvara, the unboundedness and the limitlessness of Ishvara's knowledge. Like in Yoga Sutra, it says, Tatra Niratishayam Sarvajna Bijam. In the seed of omniscience, for which the Lord is the limit. So the Lord is the limit of knowledge. Ishvara is the limit. Right? Why? One second, there is a yeah. Because of the power, something is happening. There is no power here. Right. Okay. So when I understand my limitation as an individual, and I appreciate the limitlessness of Ishwar. So here, then I am ready. Then I am ready as an individual to completely surrender to Ishwar in every level. So in Karma Yoga, what did we see? First is a choice over my action. What action should I do? So when I want to choose an action, I choose an action based on dharma. I give importance to dharma and above my likes and dislikes. I try to, so here we have the first level of bhakti where one respects dharma above personal preference. What is right becomes more important than what I like or I don't like. First, what I feel is secondary, what is right is primary. Two, I somehow try to develop Shraddha in the Vedic tradition, because that is the most consistent tradition of worship of the Lord. Most consistent tradition with respect to spiritual information and knowledge, and the methodologies with which they preserve the knowledge, and try to read and study and improve my knowledge of Dharma and knowledge of ethics. First, I have common sense ethics. I try to take care of that as much as possible. And then with respect to special spiritual details of what is right and what is not right. For example, we have, you'll be surprised, and vegans will be very happy about this. Dharma Shastra says one should not sell food. Selling food is considered as a papa karma. It's a sinful action. The food is always to be given for the hungry, never sold. So in India, we never sold food until very recently. So there is a, if one has to do that, it's considered as a sign of poverty. Even today, I heard that there are a lot of landlords in Andhra who have cows, but they don't sell milk. They donate milk to the temple, they donate milk to the people who work, they use milk for the house, but they never sell milk. They just have cows. They maintain the cows because it's Lakshmi. That's it. They don't sell milk because selling milk is considered as papa karma. One should not sell milk because then that leads to exploitation of the cow. But there is no veganism. There is non-commercialism of dairy products. There is a non-commercialism is very different. When you make dairy products commercial, that's where the Jiva Srishti, the personal creed of man, goes above dharma. Then you say, I know this is not. Even then, if a person is, you tell this to a person who has invested a lot of money on a dairy farm and is, on dairy products, and is going to, he's going to build an entire career based on selling milk. The person reads this in the what happens? Poor thing, So it's impossible. Then you see how you can manage that. So how you can minimize the impact. Then you try to understand the rule. Why not sell milk? Why Dharma Shastra says don't sell milk? Why Dharma Shastra says don't sell food? Then we delve into that, we discuss that, then we try to understand the spirit behind the rule, and we try our best in the business to respect that spirit. Right? Instead of, the cow gives birth to the calf is useless, and the calf eats your resources, and it takes some of the milk. So they take the calf and send it to the butcher, and it becomes a veal. It's very sad. I heard about, when I first heard about that, it was impossible to even digest, because in our culture we don't have this concept. There is a calf running around everywhere, and in commercial farms they kill the calf, the small baby. They take it away from the mother suffers. So at least all this kind of adharma is because of commercialization. So when in the villages, even in the West, when they were having cows and calves, they're just running around with there. If the calf is the male calf, it becomes a bull and oxen or something, and they use for something. And at least they let it grow for some time for meat, whatever. In India, we have this culture of Gorakshanam and all that. So we don't have to bother about that. So that is taken care. So when we respect the dharma that protects the cow, for example, I, as a dairy merchant, will try to live up to the dharma as much as possible, and see how much I can compromise my self-interest. How much I try my best to compromise my self-interest in order to live up to the expectation of dharma. So that would be a devotion to the law. So when we study Dharma Shastra, when we study certain, when we listen to the discourses, when we listen to Mahatmas, we understand there is a spiritual order behind our common sense. Our common sense is all fine, great, but our common sense is not enough. So when we are learning to tune to Ishvara Srishti, from the point of view of dharma, the first step for bhakti is knowledge of dharma. And we have to constantly improve our clarity. We saw in the last class that dharma is a growing clarity, right? Which requires study, which requires reflection, which requires introspection, which requires taking certain concrete steps of self-correction, and which requires certain neutralizing actions that will neutralize the negative effect of the wrong things that we have done. So all this comes under dharma, right? So which requires certain everyday observances, like what we call as in our dharma, they have pancha yajna. They have this deva yajna, bhuta yajna, pitru yajna, brahma yajna. Right? So these pancha yajnas are there. We have an excellent spiritual ecosystem to help us to tune to dharma. We can try to see, understand that, appreciate that. We can try to appreciate that, and a tool to help us to tune to Ishvara Srishti. So whenever we approach dharma, we don't approach dharma as a dogma. A dharma that is based on spiritual knowledge. It's very different from a dogma. A dogma tells you, if you do this, you're here to please some God, some guy who's sitting up there. You please God, you live according to what the God says, you go to heaven. You don't obey the God, you don't obey his messenger or whatever, you go to hell. And you have only one chance. You go, you don't come back. We don't have all these problems. In Vedic Dharma, we know that there is reincarnation. We know that the spiritual reality is that there is reincarnation. If you consider this, that you are incarnated, if you think you are an individual, reincarnation is as much fact as your birth. And there is a constant growth, a possibility of growth. All the punyas that I do in this life are not going waste. The only thing that I carry after my death, Shastra says, the only thing that I carry after my death is the result of all my good actions, which comes in the form of punya, and also the result of all my negative actions that come as papa. This is what I carry with me, along with whatever maturity that I have cultivated. And then I start from where I left. So it is the ongoing journey. We understand that, and we can develop an attitude towards punya. It is not, if I am not able to, that becomes this concept of punya and papa, this understanding, this shraddha in punya and papa, and shraddha in the spiritual reality that is revealed to us through the Shastra. Now, when we study, we understand that there is a spiritual order behind this material order. So, material level common sense, materialistic common sense is not enough for karma yoga. This is one of the first things that we need to accept. Without accepting this, there is no real spiritual growth. There is no real inner growth. If the person has a problem accepting this, it's usually because of some psychological reason. So they might have to work with the psychological reasons, and eventually they will come to that. Or they can just give the benefit of doubt and follow certain things that appeals to them, to their common sense. Whatever the teacher can try to explain a spiritual rule in the best way possible, that it is appealing to the common sense, it is appealing to the modern sensibilities, and then try to see whatever they can follow. So we can start where we are. If something is completely that you cannot, I cannot swallow this, I don't even understand this, I'm not able to relate to this, it's okay, leave it. Whatever you are able to relate with, whatever spiritual concepts and ideas and practices and disciplines and observances and prohibitions you are able to relate with, let us try to honor that. Let us try to honor whatever we are able to relate with. To that level, we honor the spiritual information that is available from the tradition, and try to live our best to that, and place our personal interest secondary, and we place that spiritual information and dharma primary over and above common sense. Sometimes common sense is there. The spiritual information usually complements and adds to the whatever we can arrive at by common sense. But sometimes it may not make sense according to common sense. At that time, when my common sense conclusion is sometimes at odds with the spiritual knowledge that is given, when we meet with the dilemma, we can see, is there by any way, through a discussion with an expert or whatever, is there by any way I can give benefit of doubt to the traditional spiritual information over and above my common sense? We can try that. So after trying that with Shraddha, if I'm able to arrive at that, fine. If I'm not able to, I go with my common sense. But I try to study more and get more clarity and try to see how it makes sense or not make sense. And then I try to see what exemplary saintly people do in a similar situation. Then I try to follow that. Yad acharati shreshtaha, this says. So how the saintly people who are known to be very dharmic, who are known to be great yogis, how they behaved in a similar situation. When we read their life stories, we see that in a similar situation, their priority was like that. Then we see how much we can live up to that benchmark. So they become the benchmark for choice of behavior, right behavior. And then we try to match up to that behavior and see, okay, because the saints are there as exemplary people for us to follow. It is not enough to say, this is another problem we have. When as beginners, many people say, oh, they are all great yogis, they are masters, they can do, we are all common people. No, we have our own problems. So we can't live up to that. We have to live our reality. They are Mahan, they are doing that. We can't do that. This is one of the first and the most miserable obstacle that a person can have, because the saints, then we convert all the saints into golden egg laying goose. So all the saints become golden egg laying goose. I go to the Radhisthanam, I pray, and then I expect for some good things to happen. I keep the photo of that saint in my house, and then I keep on doing prayer and asking stuff. So the saint's grace will. How long will that grace come? The point of the whole grace is to see if you can become like that saint. The saint is a possibility. When you have a great saint, however big that person is, even it is a Ramana Maharshi. Ramana Maharshi was so tired of telling people, we have to evolve. We may start devotees, but we have to evolve from being a devotee to becoming a disciple. And the point of becoming a disciple is to see how much I can live up to the standard, and with the aim that I become like that Mahan one day. The point is, how can I become like him? That is the whole point of them being here. That would be probably the happiest moment for the saint. If the saints, if they are in the higher world, they say many siddhas are there up there. up there, those Mahans will be very happy that this fellow is finally trying to live up to the ideal. That is the whole point of them. Why do they? There are jnanis who are beyond right and wrong. Nothing affects them. Still, they try to adhere to a lifestyle. They try to hold on to certain rules and they follow the rules only for the sake of the world. It is very clearly said in the Shastra. The jnanis follow the rules and they live according to the Shastra just to set an example to the society because so as the great people behave, so do the common man behave. So in order to help the common man to live up to the spiritual ideals and to elevate themselves to higher level, to a purer level, to arrive at purity, though a person has crossed beyond right and wrong, an enlightened person, he still sticks to certain rules, and whatever is recommended, he sticks to that, so that others can emulate and reach up, come to the place where this person has reached, and come to the point where an individual is able to understand the truth of the self and rise above right and wrong. So the aim is your freedom. The aim is our freedom. But to have this freedom, one needs to develop a sattvic mind. Predominantly, sattvic mind is absolutely essential for self-knowledge. And in order to arrive at the predominantly sattvic mind, it is absolutely essential to follow Karma Yoga. And in order to follow Karma Yoga, we need to prioritize Ishvara Srishti above Jiva Srishti. And in order to prioritize Ishvara Srishti above Jiva Srishti, we have to study. We have to study and we have to know about Dharma. We have to listen to discourses. And that is why Sage Patanjali says, Tapas Swadhyaya Ishvara Pranidhana. And we have to do certain austerities that will help us in self-control. We need to know how to keep our sense faculties under control. We need to know how to keep our organs under control. We need to know how our animal, how to make sure that our instincts don't get the better of our intelligence. We need to make only when our instinctive cravings are below a certain critical level, we will be able to think clearly. And we will be able to keep our intelligence from being hijacked by our personal preferences. So for all these, appreciating Ishvara in the form of Dharma is required, for which study is required, Shraddha is required, and the right company, Satsanga is required. And that is why in Patanjali it is Swadhyaya. One has to, Swadhyaya, there is no escape from Swadhyaya. Swadhyaya is study. It basically Moksha Shastra, but here in this second, for the purpose of moksha, also the Dharma becomes important. And also to study about Ishvara, study about the lives of saints, so that we see that how they behave as a yogi, how they behaved, and what are the challenges they faced as they grew up and they became a saint from an ordinary level. Some are avatars, some are great born saints, some start from scratch. There are great masters like Arunagirinathar, who lived absolutely horrible life, and then he became the greatest of yogis Tamil Nadu had ever known. So, because there was a moment of insight, and then he stuck to that, he stuck to that insight, and he was committed to that insight, and he continued his rest of the life, absolute commitment to that insight, and then he became the great Saint Arunandi, right? So we have different kinds of saints. We have so many stories. This nation is full of them. So we can read about them and then take inspiration from that and see how we can put Ishvara Srishti above Jiva Srishti. And one of the very simple things is learning to understand Panchanga time. Learning to understand Panchanga, where the cycle of time, where we learn to understand the significance of the moon phases, the solar calendar, the lunar calendar, either of that, Amavasya, Paurnami, Tithis, Tithi, Vara, Nakshatra, Karana, Yoga. We try to study a little bit about that. You don't have to become an astrologer for that. You just need some basic knowledge. First, we can start celebrating our birthday based on Janma Nakshatra. Astrologically, we have a certain birthday. The astrological birthday is based on the constellation. It is based on Ishvara Srishti. While the Gregorian Western calendar is a Jiva Srishti, it is good enough for a transactional reality. It is good enough for global transaction. It's a universal system where we are able to relate with the rest of the world. It's all right. It's good for business. It's okay. But when we want to make a decision, when we want to do at least certain spiritual things, we can try to be aware. We don't have to completely forget the Ishvara Srishti of solar and lunar calendar, astronomical calendars. and completely become a victim of this Gregorian 7-day calendar, which is spiritually, it is absolutely meaningless, except the fact that it connects us with the collective conscience and it helps us to be in harmony with those who don't understand. That is the only spiritual benefit from that. We are not totally isolated. We are able to interact with those who follow only that, with those who don't know Dharma, and we are able to understand. We are able to coordinate and make some, use that calendar for some mutual benefit and for social activities and things like that. Yes, but when it comes to personally and spiritually and as much as possible important things, try to see if you can honor the solar or the lunar, the astronomical calendar. One of the so many panchangams are there. If you are from another culture, you can try to Google about this, search about this panchangam, read about it, and see which the solar calendar is usually more in tune with the Western 365 days. If you're already following a lunar calendar in the family, please continue with that. One of the first things you can do is this. First, celebrate birthday based on Janma Nakshatra or Tithi, that whichever solar or astronomical month you are born, that month, when is your Janma Nakshatra is coming. We can all 3 horoscopes are available online. We can do that and start celebrating birthday based on that. So that is one of the most intimate things. Birthday, these days, birthday is very important. Everybody is obsessed with that. But the birthday, instead of following the Western calendar, if I tune it, I am making a very fundamental change in my outlook towards myself and my relationship with the world. And my whole basic idea about life. We can start with that as a choice of, commitment to Dharma. It is not simply enough to give discourse on Ishvara's Dharma and all that. What we can do, some very simple concrete things that we can do. We can start with that. And there begins Karma Yoga with the right choice of action based on Dharma, which requires study and Shraddha in the Shastra, for which the source was actually Ishvara. So Shastra bridges the gap between my individual limited knowledge and the universal rhythm. Shastra comes from an understanding of universal rhythm from the rishis, those who are in tune with the cosmic mind, and from them the Shastra is given. So I have that Shraddha and try to study and understand and appreciate as much as possible, follow what it says. That would be the first step in bhakti, and then comes the other aspects of personalized expressions of devotion, the personal deity, Ishtadevata, and all that, which we will continue to discuss in the coming classes. So if anybody has any question, you can ask, or we can conclude the class.
I have given access to unmute yourself. Kindly, you can unmute. You can unmute yourself and ask questions if there are any. And if possible, even you can put it in a chat box where it can be read and it will be answered. We don't see any questions coming up, sir.
Okay, so we will finish the class. And if you have any questions coming up, please
sure.
Write in the YouTube or mail her.
You can even comment on our channel. You can even comment on our video which will be uploaded, and all the comments are allowed. So kindly comment if you have any questions in the YouTube video, and we will answer to that question in the upcoming video, or else we will give the comments. We will reply to there only by sir.
All right, shall I will conclude with the Shanti. Om Purnimita Purnimitam Purnima Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamudaya Purnameva Vishyate Om Shanti 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 Om Tatsat.